shadows hide you. I am listening. Our paths converge.
So good to see you.
Hail to you! Never lose hope.
Here for a chat.
I hear you. It has only begun. Fight on, friend!
Hello and welcome to episode 328 of Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the PvP side of the game more accessible to you. It is Thursday, January 27th in the evening. Almost the end of January. How did that happen? From Gadgetan, New York, it's me, Ridiculous Hat. From Carrie, California. Welcome back, Botticus.
I'm back.
You're back. And from Nomergon, Ohio, we have Edelweiss.
Hello.
Hello. And from where you are, listeners, we have you. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have a couple new patrons this week. Thank you so much to everyone that checks us out over at patreon.com/CoinConcede. All proceeds go directly to support the show and us and me and my co-host, and it's nice. So Levi and Owen, thank you so much. Now, that's spelled the traditional Irish way, so I looked it up before the show. I hope I pronounced it correctly. It's Eollin, but I believe it's Owen. I looked up a YouTube video. So, Owen, if that is how I say your name, thank you so much for your support. If it's not, please find some way to contact me and correct me. And, of course, everyone that left us a review, thank you so much for the reviews. We are working on a BG bonus episode because BGs are cool, and so we're going to talk about those in a bonus episode. We'll talk about it a little bit today, too, because, you know, everyone likes having a buddy. But first, Life and Ladder. Botticus, you legend, tell us about how Life and Ladder has been.
So actually, before you guys recorded the show last week, maybe like a day or two before, I hit Legend with Beast Druid, because that deck is pretty good. And it was even before the nerfs, I think. So, yeah, that deck's just a lot of fun. I think I was talking about it the week before, just it ticks a lot of the boxes that I traditionally enjoy in a deck that has a lot of decisions, and kind of just enjoyed playing it for the most part, unless I got Cloak of Shadows into Scabs, and then it wasn't as much fun. But when those didn't happen, which they didn't happen too often, because I'm only in the 10x bracket, so didn't see as many rogues as I think probably a good portion of other people saw, and yeah, also just killed a bunch of people. Sometimes the rogues just die, which is nice when that happens. So, yeah. I mean, deck's a lot of fun. Sounds like deck is still pretty good, since it didn't really get a lot of touches to it, if any. And yeah, it's there's just a lot of decisions with the deck, and a lot of times you kind of just play out your stuff and hope your opponent doesn't have removal for it.
Yeah, it's there have been Druid decks over the years that they just kind of play a bunch of stuff, and those tokeny strategies are really fun. And Beast Druid, you're not really tokeny, but you go wide a lot, like multiple times, and board clears are only really good if they have the counter pressure to back it up, because if they just clear your board and then pass, you probably drew a bunch of cards. Then you probably play a bunch of beasts that don't cost any mana.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that you say it's not really a token deck, but it feels like a token deck. It's mainly because of the 2/4 having the, if for those of you who play Magic, the doubling season effect, as it makes extra copies of stuff that you play, is just really neat. And just reducing the cost of your high-end beasts and doubling them is just very powerful. And you have big swing turns that can generally end up leading you to victory.
Yeah, and
I think,
go ahead.
Since it still closes out the game with like Arbor Up, and you still have the card draw engine of composting, like you're still doing the types of things that feel like, oh, this is a token deck. Like go wide, threaten with Arbor Up, refill. And so even though the actual minions the stuff you're playing are actual minions instead of tokens, it still has that kind of vibe.
it has a lot of very druidy ways of generating value, and Moonlit Guidance is one of my favorite cards to play with in a while.
It's so
It's
good.
so, and like, it's good, but also it's fun and it's interesting. There have been so many times where Guidance for an Acorn has been the right play, because then you cast when draw on the other Acorn, and it's totally nuts. It's
I should have seen that coming. You would
You
say
should.
that.
Yeah. I had that pun squirreled away for this moment. Yeah. But also it's good. Like, and you draw the extra card, and sometimes you hit other acorns. I don't know. But it just, you get to play it on turn 2 and get a copy of something, or you get to play it later and you do, like, infinite Umbral Owls or a bunch of Frostwolf Matriarchs or whatever, where you just get your third Arbor up and save that for later. It's just really fun to play with. So I really enjoy the design of that card.
I've never been so happy to Moonlit Guidance into an Adorable Infestation on turn 3, where you already have a minion in play. It's like, that should not feel good, right? That it should not feel good to pay 3 mana for an Adorable Infestation, but in this deck it just kind of works, and then you get the second one that you're going to get to play again next turn, and it's just too many resources for your opponent to handle. It's there's so much you can do.
Yeah. Fun deck. Glad you enjoyed it. And it's Druid is a class right now that seems like it can kind of do everything except Ramp Druid. People think that deck is better than it is. We'll talk about that later. But I really like the I don't know, mid-rangey feel of Beast Druid, that you get to be fast sometimes, you get to be slow sometimes, and you just get to kind of do a little bit of everything. But maybe the best feeling is when you get scabs and you're like, all right, Oracle, Matriarch, go. Like, cause you are kind of scabs proof at that point, unless they kill you with poison damage, and they don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, when I was still playing it, it was more like they would scabs, and you'd be like, all right, I play everything again, and they're like, okay, that extra turn bought me enough where now you're dead, by the way.
Yeah, but
and,
they nerf the crap out
and
of
by the way, you probably had to composting because you were out of cards right around when I was scabsing, so all those cards that you should have drawn, you now don't get to draw. Even though you have a bunch of like stuff in hand, it's not as synergistic the second time you play it, usually.
Yep. Edelweiss, how you been doing?
So I have been playing. Well, I was playing a lot of Belly Druid, the one that you mentioned, that No Hands is playing a bunch of. And whether it's well positioned, good, overrated, whatever, it is super fun to play. I think universally we can agree that playing with over 10 mana crystals is hilarious and quite enjoyable. And you get to do goofy things like solar resizing pouch to get, multiple 10 drops for extra Yogs and extra Yasharaj, and just have a really great time doing very, very silly things with 20 mana. You lose incredibly hard to Trog. Just really, really, really hard. I think it's definitely gotten worse as more aggro decks have been popping up again. I was even, after Belly Druid, I was playing a kind of mage, a spell damage mage, very minion oriented, because getting minions down early against Druid is quite strong. And so into the ramp Druids, I usually did pretty well because I was able to get a lot of minion damage in the early game and then close out with burn. Didn't do so well into the Handlocks, which Handlock has been making a comeback, and that's a matchup where playing minions makes you worse into them, because they just have targets for their life gain removal. But yeah, it's been exciting to see a lot more diversity, at least where I am. People are really trying out all kinds of stuff, and I don't think we've really settled on anything in particular quite yet.
Yeah, we're recording this 2 days after the patch goes live, and a lot of people are playing a lot of BGs, and so the standard information flow is definitely just a little bit lighter than I think it normally is at this point. Plus 2 days into a patch, when you look at H's replay, the last 1 day legend or whatever, it's all Smork decks and Handlock. So, like, obviously, this is what is good after a patch, or at least what people try. I will say there's some names on there that I haven't seen in a while. Razormane Battleguard is the number one deck if you sort by legend since the patch. Now, I don't know if that's going to stand up to scrutiny or how their algorithms are working right now, but saying that Aggro Druid has been the best performer. Aggro Shadow Priest is up there in the top 5. Love see a good Shadow Priest here and there. I've been enjoying playing that deck again myself. You just Magic Hexen. Just getting to play Magic Hexen. It's just a fun experience for all involved. And by all, I mean one of the two players. The other player usually doesn't like it. But that's fine. It's what happens. So yeah. It's interesting that I tweeted this take. I know it is bold. The 0-mana 4/5 rush was format warping and probably unhealthy. And it was holding back a lot of these decks. But the format definitely feels more open. I don't know if it feels more fresh. And that's something that we're going to dig into a good bit in the Decksplanations section, talking about the post-nerf environment. However, there are a great many other things to talk about. As for me, for Life and Ladder, I don't know. Saw my parents this past weekend. They moved into a new place after 35 years in the last place. It was all right. It's nice to see. Hadn't seen them in, since Thanksgiving. Been a little while. And then just playing a bunch of Hearthstone. There are too many modes. Not too many. Don't take them away. But there are a lot of modes, and I like them all. And I have a day job, and so it's just a challenge balancing them all. Along with there's this new Android game, Rerolling Nights, made by a friend of Minty Fresh's over on the initial design team. It's like Super Auto Pets, but offline playable. Very enjoyable. Oh, and Wicked Good raises a good point. There's a place back home that makes Brazilian-style hot dogs. And I didn't know this, but Brazilian-style hot dogs means they put a bunch of stuff on the hot dog. So I got one with, shredded chicken and potato sticks and cheese sauce, and, oh my goodness. I ate it and then fell asleep in the car ride home while my wife drove. She was driving. It's fine. And for 2 hours. So, hot dogs. Very exciting.
Chicken on a hot dog? What? That's a lot.
It was, yes. I realized halfway through the hot dog that after I finished the other half, I was going to need to go to the bathroom and then take a nap, and that is what happened. So, good
Sounds
experience.
Like a very intricate sandwich. Very intricate.
That's bait. I know what that is. That's bait. Botticus, we have too much news to cover. Any other day, I'd dive in. But we have too much to talk about. So, let's go to the news.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop.
All right, so 22.2, it's now out and live, and you can play it if you want on your phones or your PC, however you choose to consume Hearthstone. And we got a ton of stuff. A lot of it was covered last week. There was a new item in the patch notes. There's a slight tweak to how tradable functions under the hood, which could cause different behavior in certain situations. Tradable now inserts the card into the deck at a random location and then draws a different card. Previously, it was put on the bottom of the deck, and then a draw occurred, and then a shuffle would happen. So now you can no longer redraw the card you traded, and it no longer shuffles the deck. So Polkelt is more interesting. There's also a clarification. Basically, all of the null bugs have now been fixed, if not listed in the patch notes. In particular, cards in your opener count as non-rogue cards all game long.
Yeah. So that was fixed. That the null bug, we'll work backwards here. The null bug was important because Poison Rogue with Maestra, even though it played no burgle cards, if you had a few cards in your opener, you could take the mask off, then passage, and then your nulls will still get cheaper, which was obviously not intended. So that's been fixed. So Nola's kind of got triple nerfed. But this tradable thing, if you are a bleed enthusiast, then this is a significant change to how your Garrote works on an empty deck. A single tradable with your deck being nothing but bleeds is no longer guaranteed to draw them all. Seems like a big deal. I don't know if the not shuffling and Polkelt thing matters. I guess the wild players will have to tell us that. I know there's been experimentation there. And for most normal use cases of tradable, then I don't think this makes a huge difference. But for Garrote, this is enormous. This is a really, really big deal.
So if you have no cards in deck and you tradable now,
Well, you can't
Do
tradable
you
with no cards in
fatigue?
deck. No, you can't
Okay.
tradable with no
Can't.
cards in deck. Yeah.
Otherwise, you could just have a single of that rogue weapon and do a preparing turn where you just trade it for itself over and over and over to discount all the spells in your hand,
Yeah.
which would be
Well, or
not bad.
Lion's Frenzy or whatever. Like, there are a lot of use cases where tradable and empty deck would be. I mean, it just wastes time, right? But it also shouldn't be intended gameplay interaction, so they don't let you do it. But making Garrote bleeds have a fail state seems more important, and this is kind of a forward-looking change there. Even with like Swindle rotating, whatever field contact sticking around. But now, if you're going off with Garrote, which is something that people are trying to do again, you kind of need it to be a card draw spell, or you kind of need to have extra mana, and that is a nice soft way to rein in the extreme cases of the card, I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy for anything that makes Garrote Rogue harder to do. Like, I want Quest Rogue to be viable. That's sort of where I want the meta to be, is that people have a choice between, should I play Quest Rogue because there's a lot of stuff happening on board, or should I play like Thief Rogue, or maybe if I'm in a tournament and I want a hard target control or combo decks, maybe you still play Weapon. But like, yeah, I don't really want to see just Garrote Rogue supremacy again.
I don't know if we'll get Supremacy, but I think the deck is plenty viable. I mean, Drivo was trying it out on High Legend Ladder, but that guy plays as much Garrote Rogue as people will let him. And there was a variant that we saw briefly at the end of last week that everyone agreed to not play. That was, it was Weapon Rogue without the weapons. And it played Edwin and Plunderer and Shadow Steps and still played the Cloaks and all that. And just was Turbo Super Draw and Garrotes and spell damage. Looked pretty gross, so I'm glad that deck no longer exists. But yeah, this just... I don't mind there being some kind of fail state here where it becomes more of a YOLO situation if you're just trying to trade a Cutlass, because I think Cutlass felt pretty bad over the past couple weeks with all the Rogan going on. It just was so visible considering that it was the first indicator that we had outside of the how golden the hero power was that your opponent was playing Rogue, and, you know, gained them a man in the process.
Yeah. So those are the major changes. But now that the patch has actually been out, it means some of us, have all of us gotten the chance to play at least a BG or two? I know I have. I know Edel isn't usually high on her priority list, so I wasn't sure if she had a chance to play.
I have played... I'm not gonna say quite a few because there are people I know that play like quite a few, but I haven't quite hit double-digit BGs, but I've played like 8 or 9 of them, like a bunch. I don't know. I'm having a good time. I don't know what I'm doing, and there have been times where I've taken time off from BGs and came back. I remember I came back for Darkmoon prizes, but people were generally still leveling on 4 gold. And so I was like, all right, I understand what's happening. Now I have no idea when people are leveling or what they're doing or even what strategy I'm supposed to aim for. I just have no clue. I'm having a good time. I'm not winning that much unless I get Malagos or Brukan, and then I'm doing fine.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of like I'm not at the stage where I can pay attention to what my opponents are doing yet because I'm still trying to figure out what I'm trying to do with my character and how to make their buddy the most viable to use. Trying to figure out what other people are trying to do is just way too complicated, and I definitely died in one of my BGs to 36 damage on turn 11 or something. Or not, maybe not on like a turn, it would be turn 9, I guess. It was like right after I goldened my buddy. I played the golden buddy, got my turn, and then I died to whoever I played against because their whole board was just 5 and 6 star minions, and I took a lot of damage. So,
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about it. I know there are some people who are not loving the new buddy system, but I think it's a really neat idea. I think it gives a lot of potential, even more potential to make adjustments to power levels of different classes and or different heroes, and it kind of gives the ability for even more play styles. It's like they added a new minion type without, but the minion type isn't like one way to play. The minion type gives every single hero a different way to play the game and different stuff you're looking for. So I think likely what happened and what will happen is there's going to be some very overpowered buddies and some very overpowered heroes, and it's going to be annoying to play against for while people are trying to learn stuff for the first couple weeks, and then they're going to do a rebalancing and there's still going to be some issues, and then they'll do another rebalancing, and I think things are going to be more in line with the vision, because adding a buddy for literally every single hero is a crazy amount to be able to balance in one go, and I don't think that realistically I could expect them to have everything perfectly balanced off the get-go. And even if it's not balanced, I think it's still quite a bit of fun, and there's so many different like types of buddies, because there's the buddies that are just like battle cries, or there's the buddies that need to stay on your board, or the buddies that should stay on your board for a little bit and then you got to get rid of them. And like I think figuring out what is the best way to use the buddy is part of the fun of the format. Just like trying to figure out how to make things work is interesting for someone like me.
Yeah, there's been a really wide range of reactions. I'm going to say that from what I've seen so far, I'm going to say it generally trends towards the positive. In many cases, highly enthusiastic, but there are, of course, there's always some concerns. But let's start in the very positive end. The biggest concern from the players that like this a lot, which is quite a few people, is that this is temporary. Now, temporary, I want to clarify what that word means. So, in one of Crip's streams, I believe it was Dom and Mitchell who jumped on a voice call with him briefly during the BG Buddy event, and it was stated, briefly, that this is something that at some point will probably come out of the game when new stuff is added. There have been forum threads and responses and whatever calling this temporary. We don't have clarification on that yet, and I think people are equating it with Dark Moon prizes, but if you think about over on the standard side, which is obviously where my mind goes, a card like the Galacrons, that was temporary, but it was 16 months. That is a temporary thing. It's not permanent. It's not in the game forever, but temporary doesn't mean a week or a month. It doesn't mean Diablo. It doesn't mean Dark Moon prizes. It means not forever. So I wouldn't be surprised if this being viewed as like a set mechanic and standard of something that's around for a year or 6 months or however long they want to do it is likely, but I don't think that they're going to commit to the idea of this needs to be in the game forever and we always need to incorporate buddies in anything we do in the future, because then you're just adding stuff on top of stuff on top of stuff on top of stuff, because it's a minion that you get with every hero every game. So, don't know, that's not confirmed, but that's where my head went here when I hear temporary of like, this is like a set mechanic. But there are a lot of people that are concerned that this will be, that when this leaves, that it'll feel like how it felt when prizes left, that we just go back to what we had before. It's kind of boring and samey and all that. I don't anticipate this being just removed unceremoniously in 2 months with nothing to replace it. I'd be very surprised.
Yeah, I mean, you don't design that many new cards for them to just be around for a couple of months, I don't think. I would also expect this to last a pretty substantial amount of time. I mean, I would guess a year. I almost would think about it actually as maybe sort of the, we heard that Demon Hunter was considered as being a temporary thing, that like it would rotate after the couple of years or whatever. I wonder if that kind of timeline of like, okay, if they do end up getting it to a balanced place where people love it, then it could stick around. But if not, then maybe they end up getting rid of it. But they can sort of continue to balance, and it gives them an extra knob to turn for each of the heroes, which, initially just very cool because everything's new. As things settle, we'll see if they keep rebalancing them. And the thing is, I don't know if you can really have, what is it? There's 80 heroes or something. Can you really
70 something.
70?
Something
Can
around
you really
there.
have like all 70 be pretty viable? Probably not. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, it's certainly weird to suddenly be looking at everything, and if you're not going by stats and everything as a buddy, you're like, well, it has this thing now, like maybe it's okay. I watched a video from Sunglitters where she had the mech hero, Maleficent Nanostorm.
Currently the best
and
one statistically, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, okay, I had no idea. But yeah, the buddy makes a huge difference, right? I don't think that hero was in that position before, and they could maybe scale it back, but just everyone now having multiple knobs in terms of the hero power and the buddy, I think, should mean that there's more options for balance, but I guess we'll see how often that balance takes place.
Yeah. And there's a middle ground here where I think a pretty reasonable concern is the complexity argument around buddies. It is an extra thing that you have to know for each hero, and the meter, the buddy meter, as it fills, is a black box in the game. It just kind of moves when it wants to move. Now, we have seen clarification from official tweets and in the patch notes. We've got, it's when you win or tie combats, when you kill minions, when you get your turn, and when you pop Divine Shields. I believe those are the 3, or are those the 4? Something along those lines. But inside the game, how much that moves, it just happens. It just goes, and there's not really clarity on the math there. Some engaged players are looking into that specifically. 2-star, 3-star, and 4-star buddies, the meter is different sizes, so it fills at different speeds. But it is not exactly clear how it works. So, highly engaged players are researching this. There has been some discussion, I would even call it discourse, about this on Twitter.com. As things are known to be discoursed about on Twitter.com, as to the balance between the communication, the transparency behind the numbers versus the complexity. I have seen a lot of tweets from more casual, less engaged players that say this patch already feels like a lot, and there's a complexity cost. Might not be too much, but it's something. I think Kibler was the one that said it might still be worth it because they're really fun, but it still feels like a lot of more information to keep track of. Whereas the highly engaged players are saying, why won't you tell us how your game works? And there is some merit to that, but also too much information is useful for a small group and then oftentimes actively confusing to a larger group. So, remains to be seen, but I think there's some opportunity for them to communicate a little bit more about how it works in the game. And then when you go to the players that are a little bit more negative on this, I think you would probably land with players that are the people that didn't like questlines in Stormwind are probably aligned with the people that don't like this mechanic. It is an extra thing that happens every game. Sometimes games can feel a little samey, and there are concerns at the high end about balance. In particular, I have heard a lot about Terragosa, which was the case before the patch, but Terragosa Tavish with the new Krabby buddy that after you use your shooty hero power, it gives the stats to adjacent minions. Terragosa gets real big real fast. And if you have Terragosa with Illidan, the Illidan buddy says it gains immune while attacking. That's permanent on Terragosa. Terragosa gets that and then keeps that. So even if the buddy dies, Terragosa is immune while attacking forever if she attacks once with the buddy in play. So that seems questionable. I have questions, because I don't really like the idea of this giant minion being immune while attacking permanently. Seems, seems not great.
I think as they add more and more in-battle effects, maybe Terragosa just needs to go. Like, it was a really fun minion, but there were previously a lot fewer ways of doing, just for this battle effects. people got their videos. Maybe Terragosa can go out to a farm now.
I am not tuned in enough to make any judgments myself. However, I am tuned enough to hear what other people are saying. And a lot of people do indeed have the concern that Terragosa got old before the patch and now is even more old. So, I've seen that. Take that for what you will. As a player that engaged with this mode highly casually, I think this stuff is cool. But there are players that engage more deeply and at a more competitive level. And if I were at High Legend and the equivalent here, I would also have concerns about the balance, I think, at that level, because I'm not good enough to exploit what's good right now, but a lot of people are, and they are doing so. And you see it in the videos that people are posting. So, I don't know if the game's supposed to be balanced around the very, very high level of players, and keep in mind, Beach is what, 2-ish years old? What year? 2 years and 2 months. November 19th, 2 years and 2 months. That would be about when, League of Explorers? That was League of Explorers-ish? I don't expect the BG's team to have things really dialed in compared to what we have in Standard now, where we have a bunch of super high-level players on the final design team that make rapid changes and are equipped to do so and know what they're looking for, and have, 7-8 years of experience in the mode. BG's just isn't at that point yet.
I mean, for the most part, things are balanced. For the most part, they balance around enjoyment level, right? That's the idea behind Hearthstone. Is like, it's not that they don't keep in mind the super high levels of competitive play. It's they balance around people enjoying the game. So I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, right?
I mean, we're not wired in. We're not a BG's cast. We don't talk to a lot of high-level BG's players. The few that we do, there are a wide variety of opinions. It's an enormous change to how the mode is played, along with the removal of armor and the Tier 5 nerf to Tavern Level 5 being 2 gold more. It definitely feels different from what I remember. And we've had people in our Discord as well saying, hey, I like this is cool, this is interesting, this is fresh, and a lot of other people saying, I don't like this, it's too complicated, and yet games play out more samey, and it feels like there are some major balance outliers. I think both are perfectly valid perspectives, and I don't think any of us can really speak to specifically if there's any consensus opinion, because I haven't really seen one.
I mean, is this kind of like how, certain design approaches happen? They've taken more risks in terms of standard Hearthstone cards as well, and there's a lot of people who are like, hey, this isn't the Hearthstone I knew, because they were there since 2014, and so it feels too different, and like some people like the new stuff and some people just don't. Is that just like how it's gonna be?
I see the parallel is clear, but I don't know the objective state of things well enough to tell you for sure that's what's happening. The vibe is similar, but also, like, I don't know if we're in Karazhan right now, and there's a Shaman Stone equivalent. Because if that's the case, then I don't blame anyone for being upset, and I don't blame anyone for being upset for any major change to the mode that they've been playing for a while. Because sometimes they make a new class like Demon Hunter, and then people are upset by it for a little while, and that's also a valid feeling. This is more of it's just a new thing that's in every game, and if you don't like that thing, you're not going to be happy right now. But I think that the majority of people I've talked to, at least anecdotally, think this is cool. I'd be curious to see how the competitive scene responds in time, but, there are ups and downs with this, and it's important to make sure that we cover both, because that's what we do here on Concede. All right.
And like, I don't play BGs, but I'm definitely going to sit down and try some on my iPad now because there's this new thing to do. And if they didn't do exciting new things like this, that wouldn't happen.
Yeah. I'm glad they did it, but I am not a BG's main, so I don't want to speak for BG's mains. But I've been playing more BGs, and I think they are fun. Alright, you know what else I've been playing more of, Botticus? This mode Duels. Did you play any Duels? Are you a duelist?
I wish I had time. I'm just so time-starved right now. And also, I was kind of looking at patch notes for it, and I feel like they didn't learn their lesson with the unlocking of hero powers over time. I'm just waiting for them to realize, or at least in my opinion, what I think should happen is if they release new stuff, you should just get all of the stuff unlocked. The hero powers and the treasures should just be unlocked, and then people can just play with them, because the problem will happen if one of the starting hero powers or the only options that you get are not interesting to you, and in order to play the hero the way you want to, you have to play it in a way you don't want to. You're just going to end up not bothering in a lot of cases, at least from my perspective. So I'm a little sad that Drekthar and Vandar just didn't have all their stuff unlocked, so that you could just play it the way you wanted to. We were really praising the when they removed all the requirements for all the other heroes and how much more accessible it made this really fun format. And these new heroes, you just have to play them to unlock stuff. So just from my perspective, I kind of wish that wasn't the case.
I see that. Yeah, I don't mind the unlocking over time. Like, there are a lot of games I played where you get access to more ways to play over time, and you start with a base one to learn them, and then you build them out. I'm thinking of the aspects in Hades. You can probably tell that's what I'm doing. But the main thing that I shared in the Twitter feedback thread that Atesh has going over on Twitter, because he's big at listening to feedback and also tweeting cool things, is if I could guaranteed get Drekker Van every run, if I had a 5th slot and it was always Drekker Van, and then I could just work on the unlocking as quickly as I wanted to, sure. But now I have to hope to roll them and then do the unlocking stuff, and then hope to roll them again and just keep going with that. At least in casual, I think that there would be a good argument to be made to make sure that they both, or at least one of them, shows up every run, just as a 5th slot. Because I'm a known casual duelist. Don't feel need to spend my money. Don't feel need to get money. I'm just here for love of the game. And I would love to play with the new stuff and then unlock my things. I'm okay with the unlocks. Just let me do it. But instead, I had to pick Demon Hunter again. I had to play a bunch of spells, and I had to kill some people. I'm not upset about that. I like doing that.
Yeah, you definitely had to do that. It had to be done.
I mean, I had to do that. That's not how that works. But I still enjoy it, but I would like to play with Drek and Van. And the idea of a neutral hero that kind of morphs based on what you pick here is pretty rad. Along with the other stuff that I think is rad is all the balance changes they did, because we didn't really cover it much last week, but Bot, you and I were talking about it before
it looked like Edelweiss had a question or a point you wanted to point out in the middle of your talking.
So which hero power and stuff do you start with for Drek and Van?
You start with, I'm looking here at the patch notes. There are 3, I don't know. I think you start with just this first neutral one.
My guess would be the first one for Drek, which is deal 1 damage to all minions, honorable kill, gain an attack this turn.
And then Van is, and I think it's the top one here. And then Van is 1 mana, give a minion +1/+1, and either Rush, Poisonous, Taunt, Wind Fury, Divine Shield, or Stealth. I think it's random. Because you don't know, you're not going to discover from 6.
Yeah,
I don't know.
See,
Haven't played with them. I haven't played with them. I don't know. Didn't get a chance.
For me, the most exciting thing about them is the opportunity to play this weird thing that is a neutral hero. And so what I want to do is pick the neutral hero power and choose the neutral type. And so not being able to do that from the start, when it feels to me like that's the dramatic different thing, is you're not even playing any other classes, you're playing neutral with these weird tradable cards that let you do stuff from Alliance or Horde. I don't know, if I have to unlock all that stuff, I'm just not gonna play Duels because it's gonna be so much before I can actually do the new thing.
Yeah. I hear that. However, the other new things, Botticus, you and I were talking about this before the show, there are a lot of things they rebalanced. And this seems
Thankfully.
generally good. Yeah, bruising going to 1 mana. I like that.
Expedited Burial. You should not be able to have that on a hunter. It should not happen. It's too powerful. You can no longer get that. That's great. Mantle of Ignition. Probably shouldn't use it on Priest. I still am interested why you cannot have Mantle of Ignition on Warrior. I'd be interested
so
to hear
Atesh
what
is in
the
the chat.
interaction is.
Atesh is in the chat. Atesh, Mantle of Ignition. What is the Warrior thing? The best I could come up with was Shiver Your Timbers. That's the best I could come up with. Priest I get, because it's like all the Priest cards. Warrior I'm less sure. I don't know what the thing was. What was the thing?
Yeah. And then Royal Greatsword going to 6 is great. Shadow Word Void going to 4. I'm surprised it took this long. Payload Totem Specialist going to 4. Also very understandable. It's
Atesh answered, by the way. Execute. Because it would work on undamaged minions.
Okay. I don't know if that's too powerful, but if it was too powerful, sure.
I think 2 mana unconditionally kill 3 things is pretty good.
Well, no,
I usually would pay more than 2 for that.
The middle
one
one
has to be
damaged.
yes. I think Warrior can probably find a way to damage the minions. It feels like that's something that they can do.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know. It feels like a lot more of a leap than just like Expedited Burial in my Death Rattle deck. All my stuff costs
Sure.
1, and I have a hero power that instantly triggers it. And I definitely got to trigger a deal 8 damage to your opponent's face multiple times on turn 2 with coin and and the Hunter Treasure, which doubled its cost, by the way. Thank God. It was way too efficient at 2 mana.
I guess you could have Coerce as well in Warrior.
Yeah.
So if you combo that, it always kills 3 things.
But like, isn't that the point? I don't know. It feels like that's the point of the treasure, is to have these like interesting combinations that are good but not too good for duels. Whereas like Expedited Burial had these situations which felt too good for duels, but Mantle of Ignition, it's like a 3 mana card that kills 3 things because I have this specific treasure. To me, doesn't sound too crazy, but I just haven't had the opportunity to play as many duels, and maybe if I had played against that a bunch, it would have felt way too powerful.
Possible. Also, I want to point out here, Dragonbone Ritual, getting a little buff. All you Dragon Shaman players out there, get your hands in the chat. Dragon Shaman players. There's one Dragon Shaman player that I know. It's Atesh. He likes Dragon Shaman. But yeah, I mean, these are kind of welcome changes. Shadow Word Void, I don't know how they avoided that change for so long. And Royal Greatsword, thanks goodness they swapped the attack and the cost. Like, it's just, a lot of these were just kind of, we were ready. Fire Shaper got yeeted out. Thank goodness. No one's going to miss you, Fire Shaper.
I'm definitely not going to miss Locus. Locus is, thank goodness that one's gone.
But we should talk about Shadowcasting 101. We should talk about that real quick. Because this card, so this is a passive. It was in Pool 1. After you play your first minion each turn, add a 1/1 copy of it to your hand. It costs 1. So this was broken. Because if your minions are good, which they usually are in duels, getting a redo of the same minion for 1 mana seems powerful. Especially with, like, you know, Battle Cries, or like Captain Rokara, or, you know, stuff. Some stuff. I just threw Captain Rokara out there. You know, I'll leave that as an exercise to the reader as to what to do with the 1 mana 1/1 Captain Rokara. You figure it out. But I said was, this is past tense, because they did hotfixes, and one of the hotfix on the 26th, which, by the way, this patch came out on the 25th, the very next day, Shadowcasting 101 went from Pool 1 to Pool 2 Ultra Rare. Get out of my game. The fix was so hot, just pushed it all the way down to the end of the deep end of the deeper pool. Thank you. thank you, developers. Thank you, Atesh. Thank you, Brad, if you do exist, for getting Shadowcasting 101 out of the game so quickly. Though now you have to rename it to 102 because in Pool 2, I didn't make the rules. So, that was a very nice change for it to happen so quickly. Remind me of how quickly they got rid of Robes of Protection. I'm glad they did that too.
Also, it wasn't even a shadow. I could understand if it was a shadow card, but you could just hold this in your hand till next turn and then do it again next turn and have it be the first minion, and then you get another 1/1, right? So you just payload Totem Specialist at the start of every turn and get a ton of totems every turn.
It was too good, they nerfed it.
It's definitely a really cool, it's a cool passive though. Like, it's definitely a passive that deserves to be in Treasure Pool 2 Ultra Rare along the other Treasure Pool 2s. Like, this is definitely one of the passes I will be excited about getting. And I think that's where a lot of these should be, is in that pool, where it's like, you're not likely to get this, but if you do get it, it's going to feel really good.
Yeah. And they made another change that I think is fairly important to call out and note specifically. Pool 2 treasure offerings will now be more synergistic with your deck. So, you're a little bit more likely to get a Pool 2 that does what you want it to do. I like that. I like doing what I want to do. That was the whole sentence. I don't have more thoughts.
It's a good sentence. I liked it.
Yeah. Thanks. Also, they banned Embrace the Shadow, Ignite, and Korak the Blood Rager? What did Korak do? Why is he banned? Duels is this world where, like, I just take a glimpse every so often, and like, I'm over here in Standard hoping my 0-mana 4/5 rush gets more expensive, and they're like, we're gonna ban Korak the Blood Rager. What happened? What's going on over here? I don't know. Korak's reign of terror is finally over.
I guess maybe too many people were getting, like, Reborn or double death rattles or something, and people just couldn't kill it. I don't know.
Isn't this the format with Wax Rager in it?
That's a good point. Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, but Wax Rager's super ultra rare.
Right, it's hard to get, and Korak you could just put it in your deck, but, like, I don't know. It's a bunch of 3/5s, like, is a bunch of 3/5s not okay? I don't know. Anyways, clearly, Korak's crimes could no longer go unanswered. So, he gone. Anyways, there's some other stuff that they changed.
So he could be a mercenaries boss.
Yeah, oh, that's right. He's a new mercenaries thing. And they added the training grounds and mercenaries. We kind of touched on that. I don't know if any of us are playing mercenaries still. I'm kind of not.
So I got some of the new characters. I didn't get the legendary, and I don't really want to buy the bundle that, like, gives you the legendary, but in some ways that feels like that's sort of the only sure way to get them, because I feel like the more characters they put out, the worse anything you put in feels, because there's still no way of recycling coins that you have for the characters you've already maxed. And since the packs are all the same and there's no duplicate protection in terms of the coins, you get a lot of coins for characters that you already have maxed out or almost maxed out. And they added training grounds, which makes it easier to level up the characters that are new, but, like, leveling up wasn't really the issue. That was super easy. It's more having to do the tasks to get coins to level them up. So, like, I get that this mode is supposed to make money, and it is also the most forgiving of any gacha game. But I also feel like it's extremely challenging to level up your new characters. Or not like the level, but to make their abilities better. And that just slows it slows down, like, every step of the process, because a lot of the tasks are dependent on, say, doing damage with a particular ability. Well, if you from your whatever packs that you got or you saved from, doing other characters' tasks. If in those packs you didn't get enough coins to level up the ability of your new character, and so you're low on coins, then it's harder to like do the damage that you need to do to complete the task to get more coins for that character. It's just like this really grindy death spiral of like, because you're low on resources one way, it makes it harder to build up. And so it's just like an insane grind to ever consider using new characters in PvP.
Sounds plausible. I just kind of did the other stuff in Hearthstone now. Like, I like playing Mercenaries, but I didn't like the work to get to play Mercenaries. In the article I wrote for PC Gamer, I said that it felt like the business model, the structure, and the gameplay were designed by different people, and one of them keeps getting in the way of the other. And I know that they are working on it, and I think we've mentioned this before. You can't have the simultaneous beliefs of how did they put this out so quickly, did they not test it, and why haven't they fixed it sooner? And so we'd rather they wait and fix it and do it right, but of course it takes a minute to do that and test it and iterate, especially when they release version 1.0 of a game. So I am certain that they have some stuff in progress, but we haven't seen much of it yet. They have changed how you unlock some treasures to specific heroic bounties instead of task 7s. Questionable if that's better, but so far I think people generally are saying it's better, but not like amazing, but it's better. Training grounds are cool. I just threw some mercs in there and then did other stuff. But yeah, mercs is there. Gosh, that was the patch that came out last week, and we still have so much more to talk about, but let's talk about the patches to the patch, because they fixed some stuff.
Yeah, so we already went over the shadow casting, got moved from pool 1 to pool 2. Kael'thas, Chen, and Silas are still not in Battlegrounds. So hopefully they will return soon. The 1,000 win portraits have disappeared for some users, but they should be coming back very soon, if not already back now. The training grounds in Mercenaries allows you to put a Mercenaries you didn't own in there, and then it would lock up the training grounds permanently, which is getting hotfixed today. The Quest Druid and Guff Hero did not work together for the first attack you had with the hero Guff. This was fixed. And then nerfed cards were not refundable for full dust today by mistake. This was fixed. And yeah, do not rage quit on your last game of a heroic run, because it will lock you out from being able to play duels anymore.
And there are some workarounds for that that's been tweeted. But it's just collect your rewards and you'll be fine. So yeah, they fixed a bunch of stuff. I'm sure that if you accidentally dusted the nerf cards and got partial dust, I'm sure there will be a script that'll get you your dust back. I just hope they proofread it very closely and maybe test it a couple times. Maybe some testing. So, yeah. Anyways. Cool. Glad they fixed stuff. Keep an eye out on the forums, the 22.2 known issues the forum post. It's a good place. We also had some cool graphs from Iksar. Now, many of you astute listeners may notice we are an audio format production, and graphs are typically visual, so we're gonna do our best here, but not exactly something that translates super well to our medium.
Yeah, I mean, so basically Iksar tweeted a thread, a history of meta snapshots. So he's been doing some research on how diversity and balance affect player population over time, and had some fun reminiscing over past metas. So I guess we can just kind of like go through expansions somewhat quickly and just say anything that stands out.
I think what I'd do, which is what I did in the Angry Chicken, is say, hey, this was cool. If you like it, go check out the thread. Because scrolling through a bunch of tweets with graphs and then reading out the graphs on the air, probably not going to translate super well to audio content. That's my feeling.
I was mostly going to be like, hey, in Knights of the Frozen Throne, Druid made up almost 50% of all of the decks played.
Yeah, that was the one that really stood out for me.
For-
There's just this big orange slice. It's like half of the graph. But I have up on the stream screen the I have up on the window here Stormwind. Take a look at how interesting Stormwind is, because there's a lot of different decks here. I think this is cool. Not what I expected, given the way the discourse around the mode went, and the graphs with the deck specific breakouts are kind of hard to read. But there are a lot of different options that were viable in the last expansion. The Alterac one, because it was done last week, there's a lot of rogue on there, but I'm sure that Alterac later will look a little different. But the Stormwind one might be the most diverse one that I've seen so far, and that surprised me a little bit.
Stormwind looks like your typical pizza that gets cut from like a Domino's or a Pizza Hut. You know, it's like mostly evenly sliced pieces with like that one little sliver, like the two little slivers where they just weren't really paying that much attention when they're cutting your pizza.
Yeah. It was interesting to me. So, cool thread. I definitely recommend going over there and checking it out. If you like graphs and data, I did. I liked it. But Iksar made other tweets this week.
Yes, he had his typical AMA. Some of the main topics of the AMA is that if Dean had a choice, or what he would like at the top of the list to be developed for Hearthstone Battlegrounds would be a Master Chief Battleground hero. Really wants Master Chief to be in Hearthstone, I guess. I assume that's Halo Master Chief, right?
Yeah, because, Microsoft.
Ah.
Yeah, this was not a non sequitur. He didn't just randomly say, "I really want Master Chief in the game." It's it's because of the company that bought Blizzard last week, or is beginning an attempted purchase of Blizzard, subject to regulatory approval, so on and so forth.
Yeah, kind of along the same lines of potentially being bought out by Microsoft. No one at the companies knows yet if they will be under Activision still, or if the studios will separate from each other after the deal. In terms of Arena, gameplay is fun and has low friction to play when it comes to understanding Hearthstone. The entry fee and no matchmaking are what hurt Arena the most. There's two things that Dean thinks could happen with the mode. Leave it the same and update cards and gameplay. Ideally, it keeps the current players happy, or have a major overhaul with no entry fee, find a way to generate revenue still, and add matchmaking. The downside is current players would probably be unhappy, and Dean doesn't believe that tweaking the entry fee and rewards would do anything other than make current Arena players slightly happier. One thing, the biggest news for me about Arena this week is that a very popular streamer that I used to watch has been playing quite a bit of Hearthstone Arena, as well as other modes in Hearthstone, which is Summit 1G.
Summit 1G.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's been so much fun to watch him just enjoy it.
Yeah, I was so surprised to turn on my Twitch and see him towards the top of my list and see that he had Hearthstone under there, and it did not say sponsored. It's just he was playing Hearthstone. I believe he was co-oping with one of his friends that he used to play GTA roleplay with, which I the only way I know him was Judd, because that's the character he plays on NoPixel, who is very funny and I enjoy a lot.
I knew about a third of the things he said. Maybe a third.
Yeah, I watch a ton of GTA roleplay now on Twitch. That's like all I watch now. So
For some words and
So
Characters
Judd is
instead. I don't know.
a character in a GTA
Yeah, never.
roleplay.
We could just move. We're too far gone.
That's we're gonna need a bonus episode where you explain this to me. Okay. So I asked Dean during his AMA about air quotes Dustgate, which thankfully Reddit seems to have let go of already. But as of this time last week, it was a topic with a capital T. So I asked him about it, and here was his response. I'm just gonna read it word for word. I actually wasn't involved at all in this, not even through email. Acquired my info from talking to some people that were. It obviously sucks. The end result is that we donated a very large sum of dollars worth of dust for players to be angry with us. Not ideal. Bugs happen, though. It won't be the last script we run that has a problem we didn't uncover fast enough. We're making tens of thousands of code changes on a team with hundreds of people. You see the things that go wrong, none of the things that go well. It's okay to be unhappy, though. I understand. We aren't happy with it either. We'd obviously rather have not had anything go wrong to give a dust refund in the first place. I don't know, seems reasonable. This was the furor last week, and this week it's like, we got other stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those. This was an unfortunate situation that they're going to do their best to make as right as they can make, I guess.
And once again, no one lost anything. Just some people might have gained something.
Either way, I think we can move on from the subject into this last potentially a bit of maybe a teaser, maybe a little bit of teaser here. So Celestalon responded to a part of the AMA where Dean was talking about Demon Hunter and how they figured it was better as a permanent game edition. Celestalon chimed in to say that they don't know how many classes would ultimately be too many for the game, but we were at least sure that 11 is better than 10.
Edelweiss leaned back, I leaned towards the camera. That's the reaction that we're having here. Neither of us can even figure out which way to lean. What could it mean?
I don't know, personally, for me, 12 is also better than 11 and probably also better than 13, which just kind of, leads you to the number that it should be eventually.
It does seem like ending at 11 would be really weird. And you never want to be in a place where you have 13. So 12 is just the number, right?
I don't know. Celestalon knows. I don't think they would stop at 11 because that's you get the Spinal Tap reference, which I like, but then you would probably do more. But I mean, the game launched with 9. 9 is kind of a strange number. You usually go for round numbers, or 5 or 10 or whatever. But I mean, they could do more. The reason that in this AMA they actually answered why was Demon Hunter being considered temporary instead of permanent at some point, because you don't want the class identity to blur too much together, which Demon Hunter, I think, at the very beginning kind of had that issue of being pretty close to the parts of Rogue that don't involve, like, burgling and bouncing, but it got card draw and damage and mana reduction, which turns out was a little bit too good as a class identity. They largely fixed that, I think, in this past year. But
it also had all the identities of Hunter without the issues of not having enough card draw.
Yeah. It was the middle ground of Rogue and Hunter, where you just give it the good parts of both, I guess. I don't know. You did have to attack. You didn't really get a lot of direct burn damage to the face. You got direct damage to minions, but not as much to the face. But yeah, it's obviously the launch of DH has kind of some well-documented concerns that have since been addressed. But also, there's still plenty of room for another class. Monk is the one that's being thrown around right now. The Lunar New Year skins, they're actually already in the client, but we're going to get access to buy them for Lunar New Year. There are 6 of them, and they take place in Pandaria. And 2 of them, at least the Illidan ones, you get the skin from buying the Evil from Pandaria bundle, and they apparently data mined from one of the Druid heroes. There's a greeting line to a monk. So people are freaking out over this and saying, oh man, new class monk coming, like, maybe? Pandaria expansion's gonna happen. Monk is probably going to end up in the game, but this ain't it. Evil from Pandaria is probably, you're going to buy the bundle skin of Illidan and Gul'dan, and they're evil and they have Pandaria stuff, and then you're going to own those skins, and then there's not going to be a new class in the game. That's what's going to happen here. Will there be a new class in the game eventually? Probably. Was Celestalon hinting and not making a typo? Maybe, I don't know. Probably. But I don't think this is definitive proof of anything other than Pandaria is cool and it's Lunar New Year. But the skins look great.
Yeah, I feel like they wouldn't want to roll out a new class too frequently or too close together. Like, we got Demon Hunter still relatively recently, so I would expect it to be a bit before we get another class again.
Yeah. Yes. What you said. They could do it, but I don't think this is an indication of anything. Alright. We talked about every mode, except the one that we play the most. Standard. Should we talk about Standard? Do we want to go do that? Let's talk about Standard. Okay. I'm skipping tournaments this week because there weren't any, and I want to talk about Standard. Okay.
So yeah, we just have sort of post-patch impressions for this week's Decksplanations. It's kind of hard to say what's good. I suppose starting out, aggro seems pretty good because whenever people are trying all kinds of new stuff, you often just want to get them. So Shadow Priest has been putting up pretty good numbers alongside Aggro Druid and Face Hunter. And then Handlock has made a comeback with some of these, very board-based decks. You can still do quite well with Soul Rend and putting down a bunch of cheap big things. Beast Druid, still very solid. Quest Shaman, I think, has been coming back because of all the aggro decks sort of coming back. So it's sort of the, control deck, easy to put together, and has a pretty solid finisher. But, yeah, per Asus replay data, the Belly Druid that I mentioned earlier, any of these ramp druids, perhaps not putting up as well as people would like. I think it was decent when we had Roguestone, actually, because of all the armor and things you gained. But you don't ever want to see Trog. Trog on 1 is an absolute nightmare. And in general, they're pretty weak to just early wide boards.
Decks that do stuff. You beat decks that don't do stuff, but you lose to decks that do stuff. Yeah, it's the Poison Rogue and Mozaki matchups as well. Like, I know No Hands crush them, but most people aren't No Hands, and No Hands wins more than not No Hands. The results in general, it was touted as a counter to those decks and was not reliably a counter to those decks. It was decent enough, but you had a pretty narrow window where you had to gain a lot of armor, and if you didn't do that, then sometimes you died. The biggest reason why Smork is good again now, and why Ramp Druid got worse again, is that you can play 1s and 2s again, and not lose them to 0 mana 4/5 rush. It is incredible how format warping 0 mana 4/5 rush was. I know saying that out loud sounds stupid. I know it sounds dumb, and that's not a card that should be around. But there was just this entire section of the game where you just couldn't play stuff. You just couldn't play minions. So that's why tradable seems so good, because there were a couple turns where you just traded instead of playing anything because you didn't want to die to 0 mana 4/5 rush.
Yeah, and I've been surprised that I haven't been seeing any Thief Rogues. I guess because people got their fill in earlier. I do think Thief Rogue is still pretty good. It's not going to be as discounted as quickly, and now it's a 3/5 instead of a 4/5, but the card's still good. Wild Paw Noah is still pretty good. double agent is still a lot of tempo very early. You know, you can definitely kill people with smites and wicked stabs, but it's probably just a shift of, well, we played so much rogue earlier, maybe let's not play as much rogue now. But I'm sure people will come back to it because prize plunder is still insane. Like, rogue still has tons of good cards, so I would expect it to sort of make its presence known again.
I've been trying, like, I was originally going to write down this Decksplanations and, like, here's what's good again. And I looked and I'm like, I have no idea. I have actually no idea what's good again. Because it's, whenever I play on ladder, it's just, at any given session or moment or whatever that I run into, it's different every time I queue, which is cool, and there's lots of diversity. But I don't know what's actually winning. I know that Quest Shaman, I want to be good because I love that deck. And then I played 2 games and lost, and then I played Face Hunter, and I queued it 3 times, and it was 3 Quest Shamans, and I beat all 3 by turn 6. I'm like, maybe Quest Shaman, not the play at the moment. Maybe that's not it. So, I don't know. But I don't really know what to actually play. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, there's a lot of experimentation. Personally, I've been doing things with minions and mage earlier. Like I said, I tried an aggressive warrior, but when I tried it out, that wasn't really working. I think incidentally because I was still seeing a lot of druids, and it's pretty tough to beat a druid swing turn right now. Like, Beast Druid just has that Oracle of Elune, play a bunch of stuff turn, and if you don't have burn from hand and you care about the board, you're sort of done. So even though I thought it had this really sweet curve of, like, you pull Celt, and that lets you draw your Rakara, then you draw your Smite, and by the time you play the Rakara, you get to play free Cutting Class and, like, just draw into Sword Eaters. You've got, like, damage for turns, and you've got a damage hero power. Like, it felt sweet in terms of the synergies and stuff, but unless you run away with the game early in terms of Defias Cannoneer and Frothing Berserker and things, you didn't have enough to come back from some of the board swings that decks are able to do right now. So
I'm hopeful for Warrior, because there are some absolute total bait deck lists being tweeted by Monsanto that may be, like, deck adjacent. That's what I'm calling it. It's might not be a deck adjacent with Galvan Gar and the new hero, with the 10, not new hero, I mean she's basically new, but with the shield shatters and the cutting classes and whatever. It's the armor synergy matters, and you can play and you can hit people, and there's a little bit less burn from hand and all. I don't know. Looks kind of cool. It's a Monsanto deck on day 1, so, like, probably don't spend any dust on this. But, like, you can. There was a Silas OTK deck that was tweeted that was a rank 1 Legend Control Warrior deck. Also definitely not bait. I'm being sarcastic. Don't craft this. But someone will. And, like, it could be a deck. I don't know. There's some stuff going on with Warrior. Blastoise told me in McBannerface's Twitch chat yesterday that Rush Warrior with the new hero is legit. Take this with...
What?
A lot of salt, many salts, all, like, the Himalayan pink salt, like, not just regular salt, like the good stuff, a lot of that. I don't trust it, but I'm intrigued. But Warrior's the only class where I've seen a lot of experimentation so far. There's gonna obviously have to be pivoting in the format, but I don't know. I don't know if it's BGs. I don't know if people are waiting for the mini set or what's going on. But I haven't seen as much real experimentation outside of a card here, a card there. We are 2 months into a 6-set meta. Just feels like we got some time taken away from us because we're getting knolled and cloaked.
Yeah, but also 6-set metas, I think it's easy to fall back on stuff that we've had for a while, which is part of why it can feel samey. It's often why there's some crazy powerful cards in 6, like the newest set, is because it has to really shift things around to make an impact. But a lot of stuff feels like stuff we've been doing for quite some time in terms of Paladin has just sort of been Libram Paladin forever, and people don't really shift from that. I had my hand buff Paladin, but that never like caught on as a new thing. People are still like, oh, if I'm playing Paladin, I'm playing Librams. And then Warlock, we have the quest handlock thing. And then Druid, we have this taunt aggro Druid. Hunter is face Hunter. There's a lot of stuff that have just shifted a few cards and are roughly the same. Shaman is quest Shaman. Although I will say one of the decks I've been doing best with has been the Bolner Shaman.
There's been a lot of talk about it. It's been quite popular too.
It's been around for a little bit, but I think it's sort of newest of the various things. And there's different ways of going about it. I actually did something that I know you would hate, but I've really been enjoying it. I took out Wild Paw Caverns because it's not a nature spell. And so, whereas a lot of times people play that deck as the OTK as a backup, I am turbo drawing, so I have a multicaster in there.
Why would I hate draw? Why would I hate that? If you don't have to run,
well, because
I hate taking out Wild Paw Caverns. Then you can't play it on turn 1 and absolutely destroy everybody.
You're right. I save my Lightning Bloom to kill them.
But if you kill them with 3/4s, then you don't have to. Yeah, kill them with 3/4s.
Yeah, you could kill them on turn 1, playing a turn 1 Wild Paw Caverns, or you kill them on turn 10 when you play the combo.
Look, I don't doubt that can be powerful, but what I've found is that having the only spells in your deck be Lightning Bloom, Dunk Tank, and the Wind Chill means that you really consistently get 2 cards off of your Dungeoneer. And so going like Coin, Dungeoneer into Macaw, I just get a crazy amount of cards. And then you can do stuff like Lightning Bloom out your Snowfall Guardian very consistently. And, sometimes you win non-combo games that way by doing the Snowfall Guardian Macaw thing. I had a game against Face Hunter where that was exactly what happened. Was just I bloomed out Guardian and I played Macaw and then they died. Like there wasn't really a whole lot they could do. So, but I very consistently kill people with the combo, which I think was less often the case with the other version. I don't know if there were games that I would have won by playing an early Caverns, but I feel like it gives me a more consistent mulligan game plan, because sometimes you can keep Bloom Caverns and then just not pick up your draw because you kept 2 tempo cards, and then if they deal with that tempo, you're dead in the water. But if I'm consistently looking for Sleepbreaker, Wind Chill, and Dungeoneer, then I have this, I'm always looking for early draw, stuff to deal with early minions, and you can really churn through the deck and consistently get the combo off.
Yeah, I think that makes definitely a lot of sense. I was kind of memeing a little bit, just because I've gotten Wild Paw Caverns on turn 1, and it's very difficult to beat, but it is beatable. Whereas I've also played that deck quite a bit and sometimes you just don't draw the pieces to combo and win the game. And being able to draw consistently with having a little bit less of kind of sometimes a power spiky thing, which Wild Paw Caverns can be, and sometimes it's not, right? If that's one of the cards you draw on the turn where you start to run out of gas, and you play it and you get the 3/4 at end of turn, it does not feel good, right? It feels pretty lackluster. So I definitely understand the whole churning through the deck. I would just be worried personally about early game defense, because I feel like the ability to play a Wild Paw Caverns against the aggro decks is enough stall to get you to your Snowfall Guardian and kind of stall out the game a little bit longer. But I understand, like, everything's pretty matchup dependent, and also, like, just playing a turn 4 Wild Paw Caverns, if you don't have coin and you don't bloom it out, is just not going to be enough against the aggro decks. anyway. You would have to do a lot of stuff before then to stabilize so that the Wild Paw Caverns can keep you stabilized for a few turns. So it makes sense.
Yeah, that's definitely a matchup that I'm still sort of figuring out. I feel like there's so many options for teching in that deck. Right now, I have a big game hunter and a spammy arcanist, a multicaster, and a broomstick. The broomstick was the most recent addition because double multicaster was too much. You already can have games where you draw a stupid amount of cards by going no taker wind chill, and I was very frequently trying to make hand space before I comboed off because you do need some space in your hand to actually make the combo work.
Sometimes better to be solo caster. I get it. It's yeah. It's I've seen a lot of shaman, and honestly, when I run into whatever I run into, I don't really know what archetype I'm going to see from pretty much any class. I think has a bunch of options. There are some, when I run into Hunter, I haven't seen that many big beasts. But you could, but I haven't seen that many. When I run into Shaman, I think Shaman might be the poster child of diversity in the Year of the Griffin, just because they have like 4 or 5 archetypes, and they all could be. Quest and Boulder, I've seen a lot of both. Haven't seen much regular freeze, haven't seen much burn, haven't seen much elemental, but they're out there. I did get completely destroyed by a hand buff Paladin, where they had, they had Bubble Weapon on 1, and then I think Protector on 2, into Bannerman, into First Blade, and I got 5/7 into 6/8'd, and like, they were just large. They're too big. Couldn't do anything. They're too substantial. And then I got Battle Mastered, and I went from 30 to 11 in the same turn. And like, that was a lot of damage. I died. So it's interesting that it's a pretty wide field, and a lot of things feel underexplored. If I look at the stats, I look at 22.2 patch at Legend per HS Replay. There are 6 different decks, 5 different classes in the Tier 1, which, again, early data, and it's going to bias aggressive. Aggro Druid, Handlock, Beast Druid, Shadow Priest, Face Hunter, Quest Shaman. So, seeing Shadow Priest there, kind of chill, kind of cool. Miracle Priest is back. There are options for Priest. There are allegedly options for Warrior, though I haven't seen as many. They're being tested. Quest Warrior, not really a thing at Legend as much. Thief Rogue, Tier 4 right now. Got hit real hard. However, I will note, one of the more popular lists that is in the 40% win rate area is still running a Viper. Don't do that. You don't need that no more. Take that out of the deck. But even the best, most popular list is with tracker side HS Replay win rate is only at 51%. It got hit real hard. Have either of you played with or against a Knoll yet?
So, not really, but one of my teammates, Noglako, has said he's still been doing pretty well with it, beating handlocks, no problem. I wonder if there's an adjustment people need to make in terms of like how they should be playing the deck, that because Knoll is worse and slower, you don't do early passages so much, and you really want to be just going for those double agents and tempo plays. I don't know. It still feels like it's got a lot of power cards, so I'm surprised to hear it's doing that badly.
I've been playing it, and like, I've been winning more than I've lost. It's not a large sample size, but still feels fine. In my THL match today, I went, turn 1 trade Cutlass, turn 2, or was it turn 3? I forget. I played a Knoll on 3 along with 2 Wand Thieves. Still felt pretty powerful. I won the game. But, sometimes it costs a bunch of mana. Sometimes you have to play cards on 1 or 2. The base cost of 6 is so much higher, and the 3 attack is so much less effective against, like, Wild Pawn Knoll tokens, or Oracles of Elune, or whatever. Like, the card feels noticeably worse. Still feels okay. You kind of have to play Maestro with it now. And the payoff is good, but not enough to hard carry, and the deck was kind of being hard carried before. Along with the passage bugs, in retrospect, were quite relevant to making Knoll a better card. So it got pulled way, way, way back, and I have not seen a single Poison Rogue, thank goodness. I have seen Garrote on streams, have not played against it, still seems fine. I know the tradable interaction makes a difference there, but I think that's more of a Conquest deck, unless people really want to play it again.
Also, Scabs going up a mana.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like a card you're still going to want to play. It's definitely still powerful. Big effect. Having an extra turn does affect it quite a bit, but I also remember a lot of situations playing mostly from the Beast Druid point of view against the Rogue. I'm like, if they have it on turn 7, they're going to play it. It's going to be really good, and they're probably going to win off of it. But even if they don't play it this turn and they waited to the next turn, I wasn't going to kill them the turn I'm about to, like, the turn that they could have technically played it. And if they play it the turn after, I'm still going to just die. So, like, I'm guessing that there's still quite a number of decks that can't make use out of the extra turn that the Rogue gets from having it cost 8 mana, and you're still going to want to play a card that powerful at 8 mana, so it's possible that people just are less interested in playing Rogue because everybody was playing with and against it for so long, and eventually they'll figure out a better way to make at least the Thief Rogue deck more manageable.
Yeah, there is a significantly noticeable decline in the deck's visibility on ladder and in its performance in HS replay. Will that stick? I don't know. Will it be an illusion? Will it be a high legend only thing? I don't know, but suffice to say, the people that were concerned the nerfs would not do enough, we can put that conversation to bed. The question now is, did they do too much? So, also, by the way, I played against one Mozaki Mage. Turn 4, in order to kill my minion, I was playing Thief Rogue, I killed him. In order to kill my minion turn 4, they went Coin, Flow, Brain Freeze, and spent all their mana, and oh man, did it feel good to see how bad Incanter's Flow is now. They had to wait 4 whole turns, they kept it in the opener, played on turn 4 on the coin, all the cards they drew beforehand weren't discounted, they AI'd on 3, it was just, oh, it warmed my brittle heart. It was just so lovely. Yeah, you might still play that
card
deck.
Used to cost 2.
Oh man.
We used to coin that on turn 1, and then we stopped doing that because we had to play
card used
Quest.
cost 2.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I'm not all that upset that it's worse. I'm actually pretty happy. Like, I didn't love losing to Poison Rogue, but I hated getting coin flowed. Boy, did I hate getting coin flowed, and now that's a turn 3 play, maybe. Love to see it. You love to see it. So, those decks kind of just, like, don't exist as much. They'll probably be in Conquest. But what do we think defines the format right now? Like, this is very early, and I feel like I have less of a read on where things are going than I usually do at this point in the meta. It feels like the base assumption that I've been starting with is the 3 points that I'm drawing from are Handlock, Face Hunter, and Beast Druid. Those are kind of the 3 points that I'm starting with. But things are definitely changing in terms of what people are doing to play with and against those decks.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little tricky because so you can play sort of controlling stuff to try and beat the Face Hunters, but then Handlock might get you because they do have the inevitability of that quest over time. I think that's part of why these control warriors have had the GVG thing going on, is because you need to kill the opponent, otherwise they're gonna get you somehow. And then the Beast Druids, like they just refill a bunch of boards. I imagine Handlock is good against Beast Druid, bad against Face Hunter, because Soul Rend is a heck of a swing, and then, like you were saying, Hat, you've got the counter pressure as the Handlock. But yeah, it definitely feels like a triangle that's like tough to beat, you know, all 3 of these. I mean, I guess if there was something that beat all 3 of them, then that's what everybody would be playing.
Yeah, Beast Druid makes good swing turns. It does not do very well against opponents' swing turns, which is why Handlock feels like a pretty rough matchup. Kind of
It is your actual worst matchup. the statistically worst
Yeah.
one.
I mean, I was going to mention, just because I played against it a few times, Big Spell Mage. Not that that is a deck that anybody's probably really playing, but that also felt like a miserable matchup.
It's kind of okay. Zacho over at Vicious Syndicate was trying out an anti-rogue list, and we don't need Double Viper anymore. But you kind of gain a lot of armor, and you kind of play Fire Sale, which is a good card. And then you end up with these big Reckless Apprentice turns, and the list we were trying out, Mass Polymorph. If you fire that out on 7 and load that into your Parrots, and then you use Clumsy Courier to cast your rune so you don't reload it, you can Mass Polymorph 3 or 4 times in one game. And that is, the composting Arbor Up deck does not want to get polyed. Doesn't want that.
I mean, that's not the worst thing I've ever heard of, unless you haven't been able to do damage to them. Like, the problem is that for every refill that you have, they have a board clear for it. But if you get mass polymorphed and they don't have a way to deal with it, then you just Arbor Up and kill them a lot of the time. Like, mass polymorph is not the card I'm worried about. Flame Strike is the card I'm worried about.
What?
They don't normally run that, but if they do, that's bad for you, and maybe that's the choice now, because if we're cutting a couple of Vipers, I don't know, throw a Flame Strike in there, that seems fine. Pretty good against your deck that is entirely 4/5s.
I mean, I definitely got Flame Struck. I can't remember if it was generated or not. It very, very easily could have been a generated Flame Strike multiple times.
Flame Strike does 5 now, huh?
It
Yeah.
sure does. Yeah. Also, Rune of the Archmage often finds Flame Strikes or Flame Strike equivalents. Or if you're me, when you take it off a Wand Thief in your rogue deck, it plays Iceblood Tower, Pass, which is less effective.
Oh, man.
It happened, I was there. I have the screenshots, I have the pictures. It happened. Most of the time it does stuff that isn't Double Tower. But I was there.
That's quite the yikes.
I lost.
I should think so. You spent 9 minutes to do absolutely nothing.
No, I spent 7, I prepped it. It was a prep.
Okay.
Also, didn't the
And then at the
Iceblood
end of the
Tower
turn-
play a card? Right?
Yeah, it extortioned my own 4/2 off of Scabs.
Oh, there you go.
There I went into the
Easy.
concede button into the next game. That's where I went.
Also, one thing I did notice about playing Beast Druid, you will have hands that if your opponent is playing Face Hunter or any deck that plays Iron Deep Trog, and they play Iron Deep Trog on turn 1, I hit the concede button because I looked at my hand and there was no possible way. There was no sequence of cards I could have drawn that would have beaten that Iron Deep Trog. Just period. End. I was going to play Nature Studies on turn 1. Couldn't do that. Had a coin in my hand. Couldn't do that. There was like no sequence of cards outside of the 1 mana 3/1 with Rush that you could draw to beat that Iron Deep Trog because he just buffed it on turn 2 and then I conceded. So be careful of that card.
Yeah, still really good. There are occasions where, like, this is something that's happened to me a few times, where my opponent just, like, they slow play for a couple turns, then they fill my board with 1/2s, and then they just do stuff. I get hit, they get hit for 7 or whatever, 14, and then they somehow find a way to gain the life back and clear it all because they know that my board's locked. There are ways around it. It's no longer the way it used to be. Can you believe that card was printed where it just copied buffs? Ridiculous.
Oh, man.
Yeah. The format was more powerful then. But Trog was, considering it is the best card in multiple decks now, oh boy. So, you can beat it, and there are ways to play around it, and I have played against players better than me that have found ways to exploit my own Trog by filling my board with 1/2 so I couldn't play more powerful things, then they kill them all and kill me. That's a thing that they can do. But also, usually when they fill the board with Trogs, they don't win. They usually lose. So, I wouldn't turn 1 concede. I wouldn't begrudge anyone for doing so.
I think it was turn 2 because I gave myself 2 draws to be able to deal with it, and then I wasn't going to be able to deal with it, and I would have to give them a bunch of 1/1s, and they're also playing Face Hunter, so it's not like they play the Iron Deep Trog and Iron Deep Trog says you don't draw cards for the rest of the game or something. They still get to play their stuff, and I just I wasn't going to be able to play anything for 3 turns, and I decided to just move on to the next one.
Yeah, I really like playing Iron Deep Trog in decks that are able to capitalize on the times that you end up with a bunch of them. right? Where someone tries to lock your board or whatever. So great in Shadow Priest, right? Because if you can still squeeze in one space for Attendant, then each of them now does 2 damage, which is pretty nuts. And then I believe Shadow Priest also has Traveling Merchant. Maybe not anymore, but I feel like that would be another way to capitalize on it. In Demon Hunter, I was experimenting with an aggro Demon Hunter where you've got Trog and then you have the Field of Strife, right? So if someone wants to give you a bunch of Trogs, you're like, cool, everything has +1 attack. It was sort of, a token aggro DH thing. I think Trog gets better in the decks where there's damage from hand, and so you're not so worried about your board being filled up because you're like, well, I'm getting 7 damage in and now I'm going to burn you out. Or if you have a way of boosting the onboard damage. So, Druid has Arbor Ups and other board buffs. I mentioned, Attendant, Shadow Priest. I think it's a card that just sort of belongs in aggro decks generally. And so even when I was experimenting with aggressive warriors and stuff, I had Trog in there because maybe sometimes it loses you a game because you get board locked, but usually it's just really strong.
Yeah, I think it's also just interesting now. It's not one of those cards where it just runs away with the game. I think my case, I was just bringing it up in a sense where it didn't feel great, but most of the time I'm not in that position where they just play it and I can't do anything about it. It feels like it's in a really good spot right now where it's just very rare cases you're going to semi lock out your opponent, but then it has that case where if you don't play very carefully with and against it, it can also set you up into not ideal situations where maybe it costs you a game. So I think it's just a really good balance for a deck like Beast Druid that all of its spells are mostly dealing with minions and making your minions better. And you don't have a lot of removal options, so it doesn't do a whole lot for them. But for a deck like Handlock, Iron Deep Trog is not really what you're worried about as much in that deck because you just have AoE removal. So even if you give them an extra Trog or 2, it's just going to cost you a bit of extra health before you kill all of them at the same time.
I'm glad they nerfed that card. People thought it was dead, but the Botticus nerf was the good nerf. So, to sum it up, because I don't think any of us really have any clear ideas to what to play right now, other than you can probably play whatever you want, but a little bit of advice. If you were tweaking a deck that you were playing before the patch in Roguestone, 1, probably play fewer tradables. 2, probably do stuff earlier in the game. 3, have a plan for Soul Rend and have a plan for Aim Shot. Those are kind of the cards that you need to make sure that you're planning on. You're going to take some burn damage at some point in the middle of the game because it's still effective, and you're going to deal with your board being cleared. Beast Druid, you kind of know if you can deal with that deck already. If you can get under it, then you probably win. And if you can clear boards a bunch of times and counter pressure, then you probably win. And if you can't do those 2 things and you give it some time, then they'll probably play a bunch of stuff that doesn't cost a bunch of mana and then arbor up and hit you with it. So you can be aware of that, but I think Beast Druid is different from Face Hunter and Handlock, where you need to really keep those in mind when you're playing, whereas Beast Druid is more does your strategy deal with this effectively by either going under or clearing, or do you not? Or if you want to beat Beast Druid, play Snowfall Guardian. That's a good card. Real good against Beast Druid. Real good against minions, really. Snowfall Guardian, quite good against minions. That's why people turn into this podcast for the insights that we provide uniquely. I don't know. I think these were good nerfs, but standard kind of feels weird. I am happy with where the format has gone, but I'm not super jazzed about any of the decks right now because a lot of them feel pretty familiar. I'm hopeful to see some new stuff pop up.
Good thing we have new BG's buddies to hang out with.
Yeah, and we should get mini-set. Should get mini-set within the next 2-3 weeks. Usually it is 2
After the
months after...
Masters Tour?
What?
Probably after the Masters Tour.
When is the Masters Tour? Masters Tour is... That's golf. That's a different game. Augusta. Okay. February 18th.
You think
don't
before?
know. I don't know. So, okay. It's normally 2 months after. I would bet the original target date was Tuesday the 8th of February, which is 10 days before this. I would bet that was the original target date of the mini-set, because that's about 2 months after launch, which was the first week of December 7th, I think. However, I don't know if they have the resources to get a patch out that quickly, including this much stuff, because of the recent patch delays. If they do, then I would still bet on the 8th. If they don't, I would bet on Thursday the 24th, because the Monday the 21st is a holiday. It is President's Day. So I don't know if that means they'll be in the office or not. It's not a major holiday, so they might not, but it is a holiday, so they might. Which means I would aim at the 24th, which is pretty late, but so was the last one. But I would bet that they're aiming for the 8th, because that would be the date that makes the most sense, and that would be 10 days before the Masters Tour, which is kind of what they like to do.
Well, I'd be happy with the 8th, but if not, not the end of the world. Plenty of stuff to do in the client.
More than enough. Too much. Don't take it away, but too much. Yeah. But I think that's going to do it for our episode. Hope you're all out there having fun on Ladder. But we have many folks to like to thank. Check out our thanks section on the website, coinconcede.com. Find our contact info, show notes, and our Patreon information. You can monetarily support our show at patreon.com/coinconcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.coinconcede.com. Join our community chats in our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com. Right into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at coinconcede, like, share, and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/coinconcede. If you like some CC swag, head over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. Big thanks to our producers, Number Theory, DogeDK, Proby1, Crash, Cap, B-Squatch, David P, Snowpack, Lucky Fades, Black Wild, Do Itinerant Wizard, and Jeremy T. Coinconcede, Helldragon Dante, thank you so much for subbing during the show, and Botticus, who you got?
I just want to coin concede to No Hands Gamer for coming on the show last week and getting to share a bunch of insights with us. Always good to have him on the show. And glad he was able to have a little guest appearance on the show. Sad I missed it, but because of time zones, I think it worked out pretty well for you guys to have him on.
Edelweiss?
Well, I feel like I always have someone going in and then I forget to write it down and I never remember. But somewhat recent thing, coin concede to my character in the tabletop RPG I'm playing, who died, sadly. Died to a vampire-like entity. But there's a rule in Deadlands where you can have a character come back harrowed, which means possessed by a Manitou. So I think I'm gonna do that, and it'll be a role-playing challenge. I don't think I've played a character that's like possessed in that way before. So yeah.
Well, so does your character become aquatic if you get possessed by a sea lion?
No, a Manitou is like a spirit, a demon kind of thing.
I was totally on Hat's wavelength. I was totally thinking the same thing.
I'm amazed that your body can fit the whole manatee.
Spirit, an evil spirit from the hunting grounds. Whatever. Sorry, I said a word that sounded too much like manatee.
I'm happy with where this conversation went, even if you're not. And also, rest in peace, your character. But hopefully they come back. And I would like to coin concede to a couple people. First, Robert S., who sent me a message on Twitter. They just got their first time legend today. Said thanks to us for the podcast. So congrats, Robert. And then Iksar, in response to my hot take that the 0-mana 4/5 rush was probably unhealthy, his reply: to be fair, cost reduction on minions making them 0 mana has not been a problem in the past, so how are we to know? Listeners, I can assure you, and I'm speaking mostly to the people who replied to this tweet taking it seriously, this was not meant seriously. This was sarcasm. He was joking. It was a joke. I would also like to coin concede to Weiss, because Cat, There's a cat. I see it. I see the cat. It's a white cat, hence Weiss, I assume. That cat does not look like she is happy to be on camera. That's what cats do. All right, we're going to get out of here. So, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Keep calm and mull for Bloom Caverns. And if you see us on ladder, concede.
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 What is the cat eating?
My oatmeal. Oh,
No! No, I can't do that. All right. Stopping recording so we can rescue the oatmeal. Think of the poor oats!
Well, I mean, I ate it, but I don't know. It's the dregs.
There's enough there for the cat to be interested.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for hanging out. Really appreciate having you here. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.